Hi everyone, thank you. So since we're the last panel, we decided that we're also going to have cocktails, for the. So I hope if we're going to say crazy things, don't hold it against us. So hi guys, thank you very much for coming and staying that long till now. And since we're closing sessions, so we're going to have as much time as we want. So feel free to talk, and no one is in a rush to go home. There is a continue of a party after that. So I think the topic of our panel, it's something that, I'm thinking about it a lot because basically this is my job, and I think each one of us here, this is on his daily job. The real question is, how can corporates and startups, how can they work together and without smashing each other in the process or without harming each other in the process? But before we're going to go into that, I want maybe each one of you to take 1 or 2 minutes to present himself, his company, and maybe to say a few words. What are the fields that you're interested to collaborate with startups? Because we have here a lot of elephants in the room, and we're going to talk about it. So please, feel free. So Dr. Vicky.
Yes. Hello, my name is Malgorzata Wiklinska, but we defined that my name today is Dr. Vicky, which is a little bit shorter. I'm responsible at ZF, which is the world's leading automotive and industry supplier for investments like TRW 5 years ago, or other investments into Ego and Ibeo and Astix. What are we looking for? We're looking for players in the e-mobility, autonomous driving market, as well as the new mobility market to gain new business opportunities. Yes.
So trying to speak. Antoine Basseville from the Alliance Renault-Nissan Mitsubishi. I'm here in charge of building from scratch the innovation lab for the Alliance. The main subject we are looking for, but it's not a restriction. We are trying to be open and to try to see also new things, even if it's not in our scope. But the main activities are dedicated to cybersecurity, to the various sensor for autonomous driving features, but also on data, big data, smart city, and to try to be not only a car maker, but also a service provider, as mobility as a service, for instance.
Hello, everybody. I'm Orit Shifman. I'm the founder and CEO of OSR Enterprises. We are the next generation tier 1. So if we are talking here about elephant and mice, we are a combination, the new age combination. We will talk about this later on. OSR Enterprises is a Swiss-based company with 2 R&D centers in Israel and in Switzerland. So we are combining the Swiss functionality and precision with the brilliant high-tech Israeli minds.
I think I'm okay. Shane Garvey, Hertz. I'm responsible for technology in Hertz International. That's a rent-a-car company. I guess what we're interested in is a couple of things. One, we're here to learn because we know a lot of things are changing, and like most big companies, we're trying to figure out what our role will be in the future, how we need to adapt. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we're looking at solutions specifically to help us improve our products that enrich the customer experience and the value around it. And in addition to that, we're very interested in sort of fleet and fleet management solutions, right? Because we have a lot of cars, we have over 1 million cars, we drive 40 million miles a day. So, there's a lot of interesting stuff there that we think about.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dennis Clark. I lead Honda's open innovation activities with early stage technology startups in tech hubs globally. One way in which we interact with startups is through our open innovation program called Honda Accelerator. Honda Accelerator is an open innovation program that's designed to facilitate collaboration between early stage technology startups and global divisions inside of Honda. We provide a select number of startups each year with a variety of resources to work together with Honda, including funding. This is non-dilutive funding. We don't take equity. Funding to work together with us to build a rapid prototype to validate their technology in one of our products. We also have workspaces globally for innovators to come and work side by side with Honda engineers. And we also pair companies into the program with Honda mentors. These are mentors from inside of the company that have specific domain expertise and can help the innovator think about not just building a proof of concept together with Honda, but ultimately taking their technology into production and Honda becoming a long-term customer. Our areas of interest include autonomous mobility, robotics, infotainment, navigation, the user experience. We've also started to do work related to manufacturing and industrial IoT. This is our 4th year as part of the EcoMotion conference. We're delighted to be here every year. Every year it gets better and bigger, and the amount of innovation that we're seeing from the Israeli startup ecosystem is really second to none. So we're delighted to be here, and we're very active in the country here, and most recently we've added somebody locally to manage all of our work here with startups because we're doing so much. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, guys. So, Dr. Vicky,
Yes. Shall I do it without a microphone?
you can also do it without a microphone. What do you think the biggest gap between startups and corporates?
Yeah, the money is number one. Yeah, we have the money, they don't. We help them to scale, they need us for that, but I believe the biggest gap is the agility. Honestly, working in a company that has 148,000 people, our processes kill the processes of a startup, and I believe that's for us currently still the biggest hurdle to overcome. To not only understand how a startup can grow fast, but how a startup can actually adapt to our slow processes. That's one of the main challenges.
Thank you. And I don't know, maybe Dennis, maybe you can share with us, how do you cope with that gap?
Yeah, actually, I want to have a counterpoint to that. I think actually the biggest gap, there are lots of differences between startups and corporates. The biggest gap is actually on the time dimension. So there's an anecdote about basically a startup and a large corporate sit down at a table and they're hammering out the details of their collaboration. And they get through all the details and then they both look at each other and say, okay, when do we start? And the startup looks down at his watch and the corporate turns around and looks at the calendar on the wall. This is actually not too far from reality. There's a big challenge, and obviously automotive development cycles are very, very long. One way in which we've tried to bridge that gap is we've created a very streamlined workflow inside of our program Honda Accelerator to, again, onboard companies very quickly, identify companies that have really unique, strategically important technology, and build rapid prototypes to try to get them in front of the decision makers and top executives.
Okay, and Antoine, I know that you have in Israel also sort of like a collaboration program with startups. Maybe you can give us an example of one successful project that you have with startups, not with a name, but in general, and what made it successful?
I need agility is for sure one of the many criteria, because as it has been said, the startups are losing their time just during meetings. So that's the reason why we want not only to make scouting and screening, but also to make POCs. So the first sample I can give you is the fact that we are working with various startups. I don't know if a few are there, but whatever, we start operating with them. And the idea is to be able to provide really quickly an NDA. It seems to be easy, but when you are going to the corporate to sign an NDA with a company that is not known at all, it could take weeks and weeks. So we have the power to sign an NDA, for instance, in a few seconds. Okay? Second things, we have cars, for instance. So also we can provide a car in a few seconds also. We need also a contract, so we have some tricky things to solve here. But whatever, cars are there, they are available. Let's try to find the final contract to be able to deliver it to the startups. And then they have the power, let's say, to tune this car, to adjust the car to their need, to put their stuff inside, to test it on their local side. And also, we are there, and so we can help them to be connected to the mothership, to tune this startup, to tune the product, to adapt it to our needs, and also then to test it, and as far as it's possible, to deliver it also to the mothership, because it's not only being able to make POCs, it's also being able to deliver those POCs to the mothership, to apply it, to deliver it to the customer. And so having this ability here to do all those steps, going from, let's say, scouting, but also to make a POCs with the agreement for sure of the mothership, means that at the end of the story, here, it's just the beginning of the next one in the corporate side. Okay, and so we are going to see our experts with the results of those POCs or MVPs. I prefer MVPs than POCs because POCs can be done just with cartoon and so on, but MVP is more connected to the reality and then deliver this result and the object also to the corporate to see how we can apply it and deliver it to the customer with our expert, project manager, and so on. So for sure we are already doing things like that. I cannot give you any names, but we are operating from the Israeli Innovation Authority from the beginning of February of this year. And let's say that I need more than a few fingers on my hand to be able to list those companies we are working with. And I think soon we will be able to give you a few names. And also because we are working with the Alliance Venture, and so we are also able to invest. So it means making a PSC is not only having the ability of the technical side, but also the power to put money. Not only money for the money, because to my point of view, money is there, okay, in this country, but also in Silicon Valley and so on. But also to be able to put our brands, our name, our CVC name on a startup, on a deal with a startup, to help them also to increase their value for the startup, but also to increase their perimeters, their market share, and so on. So it's not only a technological side, it's also, let's say, money, it's investments to have a global view, a global proposal for our customers.
And Shane, I know that you have a running project with startups in Israel that are, some of them are very successful. Maybe you can share with us what made them successful from your end, from the corporates end. What are the startups doing and what's happened, you know, from the corporates that made it a good collaboration between you two?
Yeah, I suppose the most recent one, we've been engaged with a number of startups, particularly through Drive. And the most recent one we had engagement with. When we first met with them, we liked what we heard, but it was quite future focused. And it was something we felt was relevant, but you know, Dennis mentioned timing. And we felt the timing was not quite right now. For us, and we felt that the product development cycle wasn't at a point where we were comfortable with it. So it was an early stage startup, that's what you expect. But we saw a lot of potential, and what we ended up doing was saying to the startup, hey, some of that clever software you're developing, can you adapt it slightly to a problem we think we have today that's still relevant for the future? And they said, yeah, no problem. And we said, well, listen, why don't we do a simulation to start with, because it was a software problem. We gave them a year's worth of data very quickly. Within 2 weeks, they had it turned around. We knew the actual results of how we did it, and we compared that with what they did, and it was really promising. So we then quickly moved to a formal statement of work. We had the statement of work within NDA and a statement of work within place 5 days maybe. And we started the following week, and for about 6 weeks we did a live pilot in one of our locations, and we engaged our operations team, we engaged our process and our change management team, because we knew when we put it in place, the technology was probably not the challenge, right? It was the change management. So we made sure we could operationalize it quickly, get feedback, and iterate. And we ran that for 6 weeks. We finished at the end of the 5th week, and we got what we were looking for. So I think that the success was really, in this example, trying to not wait for the end product, trying to not wait for the end state of where you think you want to be, and paring it back and looking at what is the capability, how can you apply that to what you've got right now, to validate if the startup is the real deal, if I can say it that way, and validate if it's something we think we need. And I think it worked extremely well for us. I think it worked well for the startup because we made a commitment. We signed the statement of work quickly. We had a small team in place to make it happen quickly. So, and they were patient with us. So I think the patience is, for the elephant, the mouse and the elephant, if that's the analogy, is very important. Even though we set ourselves up to move quickly as a company when we look at these these startups.
Thank you. I think it's a very interesting story about, how maybe for startups to learn that you don't have to come with a finalized solution and to be open for discussions with the corporates or with whoever you're coming with in order to be open to adopt your solution and not, this is what we do and this is what we offer. Orit, I think we've seen, the corporate sides of the relationship between corporates and startups, and I would like to hear your opinion about it, about the relationships between startups and corporates, from startups that grew up to be sort of like a baby elephant.
You just called me a baby? No. So, what I want to use this analogy again because I think it's very useful. I want to answer the question about whether a dance between an elephant and a mice is possible. I think fundamentally yes, but the dance is going to be very bad. Okay, it's going to be clumsy. Most likely, the mice is going to be vanished after this dance. So in order to really have a proper dance, like slow dance, maybe even get married, I think that it's really necessary for the mouse to really go for dinner, eat some more, and widen up a bit. And for the elephant, maybe try visit the gym a little bit, be more flexible. Then I think there is more common ground to cooperate. This is exactly what we have done, and today we are working with a lot of startups to help them really reshape themselves. You know what? I think what is really required in order to really take the automotive industry to the next level is to really make a startup out of a startup. Because we saw today, lots of technologies, new cameras, radars, algorithms. But to tell you the truth, most likely these technologies are not going to be integrated into real production cars. This is really the honest truth. There is a very big difference between a POC than real integration in cars. And this is exactly what we are doing. I will tell you a little bit about our product, what we developed in the company. I founded the company in 2011, and basically we developed the new enabler for the next generation car. We developed a platform, we call it the Evolver, the evolutionary part that enables this revolution. In order to be, again, to make a startup out of the startup, you need really to change the concept that a startup needs to really develop a pinpoint technological solution. This is not the way to change history. The way to change history is to do something fundamental, is to create foundation, to reinvent foundation. And this is exactly what we are doing. We developed the new brain of the next generation car, the Evolver. By the way, we are hiring, so if you are qualified, if you are really good, is this going to be in YouTube? So I'm just being an Israeli from time to time.
But it's working for corporates.
So basically the Evolver is eliminating the need of the current, as you see today, in the current architecture of cars, you have almost 100 and more ECUs. Each is taking care of a dedicated task, one task at a time. And again, it's not possible for the next generation car. It needs to be light, not so complex, and it needs to enable much more than the current car enables today. Therefore, the Evolver enables that by switching from the methodology of multiple ECUs into the methodology of one brain per car. This enables and eliminates the requirement and the need in so many ECUs together. And by that, we take the car to the next level. And the advantage to the startups that we saw here today is that we can pretty much plug and play new innovation into this brain. This is more simple. The quest that I see today of OEMs, of new technologies, is very similar in my eyes to going over the same path again of not adding more and more ECUs, but now adding more and more sensors and more new technologies. Again, this is very complex, and it doesn't make sense, and it will never work.
Okay, so maybe now we can a little bit talk about, we're in Israel, and a lot of people asking me about the differences between, Israeli culture, why Israelis are, so innovative. And one of the things I'm always saying is that we're not afraid from failure. So I want to see who's not afraid of failure here in the panel. So who's volunteering to tell us maybe a story about the failure story with the startup? What, a case when it didn't work out so well with startups, because we always like to tell the stories of how successful it is working with startups. But it's hard. And like every startup, there is a failure stories. So if someone can share with us a failure story, and maybe the most important thing, what you take from that? What is the learning? Why did it fail in your perspective? So who volunteered?
I think I don't have a choice. You all know the very famous story of Better Place. It was difficult, and so I think I need to speak, even if my neighbor wants to.
It's a big failure.
It's a good failure. Yes, for sure. I'm trying to be Israeli, so I'm trying not to be too much polite, let's say. And so you are all aware of the story of Better Place. But we are still there. We are increasing the perimeter of our activities here. So at least it's not a hand. It was just a beginning, let's say. And whatever, the business model that was developed for Better Place Stories is still the one we are using in Europe, for instance. So it means by failure you are learning also how to do things differently, or also to do things close to what has been defined at the beginning. So even if Better Place is no more there, okay, the business model is still there for us, okay? And we are there, and we are learning, and we are teaching also to the other part of the industry and in the alliance that failing is not a huge mistake, because you are learning from that, and you can then find a new solution and try to increase also your view, to open your mind, to find new companies to work with. And that's the case also when you are dealing with startups. Because if you are just here with your own mindset, trying to say, okay, to this startup, it's not exactly what we are looking for. Let's try to change it. It's not in accordance with the regulation and so on. You will not be able to do that. So you need absolutely from scratch to be able to fail and not to be afraid to fail. And so that's the reason why we are still there, and we hope we will not fail, but try to be more efficient, but by also taking into account the learning we take from a Better Place story, for instance.
Dr. Vicky.
Yeah, I make it very short.
No,
Number one,
longer.
yeah, I'm more pragmatic, obviously. Number one, I think one big mistake or failure, I don't know however you want to call it, I don't know the right word. We wanted IP. Typical massacre in large corporations, we want the IP, you know. We had a pitch event in our headquarters. I'm based in California, but we were so excited to do that in Germany. So we had this big pitch event, 60 startups, everyone was super hyped. 4 startups won. They got a POC contract, and you're right, POC is not what is in serious production. They mix it up all the time. And then they said, oh great, they made the POC, now can we get the IP of the startup? So they called me and said, well, you're the investment person at our company. Let's buy the IP. I said, what the heck are you thinking? I mean, this company wants to scale up. That's why you gave them the POC, to start, to engage, to help them. No, I thought that we get the IP. So this is number one. It's still not working, by the way, so we're trying to figure that out. And I think number 2 is, once the startup starts working, and this happened to us a lot, they suck it out. They want to have everything out of the startup. They want to put the solution in every imaginable corner where you can think of. For example, in production, we have 240 plants. We had a startup, they delivered a voice button or a voice call button for a blue-collar worker at the production line. The POC was great, and then they thought, oh, why not do that within the next 4 months? In 240 plants, there you go, we pay you everything. But the startup is a startup with 15 people. How do you expect them to do that? I mean, I believe at the end of the day, I'm not really sure is this failure or not failure. I think it's a lack of misunderstanding. It's a lack of mentoring. I sometimes wish that instead of having 15,000 startups outside, I would like to have one consultant who can actually help us with that. Because it starts with understanding the IP situation. It starts with understanding the mindset of a startup versus a large elephant. And it starts with, bringing those languages together. Because it's just a different language. So that's 2 examples out of real life.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dennis? I put you on the spot.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done this, open innovation activities with startups for 3 years. So we have danced with a lot of mice, and I wouldn't really call them failures. Because I think there's learnings from both sides. There's often learnings from the startup side and learnings from the automotive OEM side in this case, and that's something tangible to take away. I guess one of the reasons for failures often that we've had in the past is we've engaged with companies too early. And part of the reason we engage with companies early is we want to find, interesting, kind of unique, strategically important technology early. But I think there can be a risk to engaging with startups too early in a sense that if I think back on some examples, we engaged with companies and we weren't actually able to validate their technology for automotive, but it's because they weren't ready yet. Some of those companies went on to do work in consumer electronics and were very successful and now have come back to us with a more baked product that can be kind of ready to look at from an automotive perspective. And the other times I think we fail is when we really, obviously when you're working with startups, there's lots of skeptics inside of the company. And when things go well, we're able to convert those skeptics into believers. And that's really what we try to do. And so when things don't go well, really we're not able to bridge that gap and show them really that there's something viable there that's worth, because when you're working with a startup, an early company, it's not bulletproof from day one. It usually doesn't function like they say it does. But we're looking for an inkling of something breakthrough or something really unique that has potential for us. And if we can see that, then we're willing to go further and invest further.
Thank you, even though I put you on the spot. So it was fun, but we have only another couple of minutes to talk. So I want maybe to wrap it up with each one of you, if you can give one tip for startups who want to work with corporates. What would be that tip? What can you save them? Time, money, by saying that tip? Who want to start? Dr.
Shall I start again? Yeah, okay, let's start. I think one tip, recommendation, understand what you're talking about. What do I mean with that? I'm an automotive person. Since 15 years, I'm in automotive. I studied that stuff. And then all of a sudden, startups come and join you in the circle, and they try to tell you how a car is built. And I sometimes wonder, how's that happening? Why can't you just be humble and tell me what you do, and we try to figure out a way together how we can integrate your technology. So the understanding of what the giant is doing and being more humble is my personal recommendation to every startup.
For me, the tip is really simple. Stay as you are, chutzpah. Come to see us, try to work with us, don't be afraid to fail. We will try a way to work with you and to find a way to do it. So I think it's the way we need to work all together, for sure. We will have a few things to tune on your side and our side, but we are there for that, so let's take the lead and come with us and try to do things with us. I think that's the only tips we need to apply all over, all together.
So I want to give a tip, again, to the elephant and the mice. I think, and I say that again, I'm trying to squeeze this in, although it's not really a tip, as everybody here is talking about. Cybersecurity. there are going to be a lot of failures in the future if the elephants and the mice are not going to take cybersecurity more into consideration, even when implementing new technologies as POCs, taking this into consideration from the first build-up, from the ground up, is something which is critical for the next generation car. So yes, startups don't really know how the old car looks like, but they do know, maybe better, how the next generation car is going to look like. And it's going to be fundamentally different than everything you see today. And the structure needs to take into consideration, again, from every angle, the cybersecurity.
Probably keep it simple and ask the corporate. So you might, it's very easy to get caught up in new tech and what's going on and to think about what people need in a few years down the line, 5 years, 10 years. And that's okay. But I think when engaging with the corporates, you have to think about, you have to understand their business, not at a deep level, but understand their core business and what problem you're trying to solve for them. Or if you're not quite sure, ask, what problems do you have today? I think I've got some interesting stuff that I can apply. What do you think, right? So it's about, not assuming, but asking. And it's amazing how many people don't ask the question. And you get a lot of wisdom back. You don't have to take it, but you'll get some interesting feedback, And we meet a lot of startups in Drive and in other incubators, and half the time after you hear the pitch, you're trying to give them some feedback so they can learn and take that away, even if it's not useful for you. So.
Yes, I think everyone hit on really good points. I guess I would add to that, and it's kind of very similar. I think it's important to under-promise and actually over-deliver. I think that in a lot of these communities in which you work, Silicon Valley and certainly Israel, there's a tendency to kind of fake it till you make it, and I think that's important in the context of trying to do things big and go after big problems. But I think, if you're in a room full of domain experts from a large corporate, tell the truth. Tell them what you really have and what you're trying to build and what you aspire to. Be very clear about that. I think that they really appreciate that. Because if not, it comes back to bite you later on in the negotiations, discussions, or if you actually collaborate on something and it doesn't work out. So, yeah.
Okay, guys, really thank you for amazing conversation. I can tell you that I learned a lot. As someone who's dealing with that on a daily basis with Drive, I learned a lot about how corporates see it and how they can collaborate much better with startups. Thank you very much for your time, and enjoy the rest of the time.
Thank you.